You don't technically need this car. You say that out loud to yourself. You say, I have no space. You say, I'm just looking. Then you click. Then you zoom in on photo number 87 and whisper, oh no. Then you text a friend, the one who always enables you. You say to yourself, this is the last one, knowing it is not. You don't need this car. But maybe, just maybe, this car needs you. Bring a trailer. It's never just a car.
Welcome to the Welsh Regional Rugby Appreciation Podcast. On this episode, we discussed Steve Tandy's squad, the WRU drop in a region, but first, we talk about Cardiff winning again, Dragons not losing, and Scarlet's pointless season. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Wrap Podcast with two mayor hosts, one very upset host, and one host who's just happy to be here. Let's get on with the show, shall we? Dan, Nick, Hattie, how are we all doing after this weekend?
Evening, everyone.
I've gone through a range of emotions. I'm in the sort of I don't give a shit mode tonight.
Well, we'll get on to why all the different presenters are in there and their various moods later on. First of all, it's a very light news desk, Nick. So do you just want to quickly blast through it before we go on to other things?
Yeah, very, very nice. Well, perhaps there might be a bit of news which we might need to go into a bit more depth, but that's to come. But actually, rugby sort of news. Obviously, there was the announcement that Will Rigg, who had joined Cardiff on loan, has been recalled by Exeter due to their own lengthening injury list. So I bet he made a couple of sessions on the cap, but now he's gone back to Exeter. And obviously the big news last week before Friday was the announcement of Steve Tandy's first Welsh squad. And just before it came out, you might say it was coincidental, Will Rowlands announced that his retirement from international rugby. Will was 34 and had 41 caps. And scored 3 times. So he came into international rugby quite late, but had an immediate impact. But perhaps, would you say his form waned a little bit over the last couple of years, certainly since he went to France?
It's basically been downhill since he left the Dragons.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
He also had a couple of injuries in like the last couple of years that I think really affected his form as well.
Yeah. And then hot off the press today, obviously, with regards to the squad, obviously, Talupe Faletau went off after less than 10 minutes on Saturday evening, and it's now been confirmed that he's pulled out of the squad. He's been replaced by former Rugby Gogledd Cymru and Osprey and current Leinster number 8, Ollie Cracknell. People have been calling for his inclusion for a while. I don't watch a lot of English rugby. Apparently, he's been playing very well, and well done to Ollie as a 31-year-old. Brings a host of experience playing at a high level.
Yeah, I think that's a good addition to the squad. Actually, I'm a bit frustrated with myself that I didn't bring him up in dispatches last week when we were discussing our squad selection, because since he's been at Leicester, I think his performances have been ever improving. Big guy, proper ball carrying number 8. I know this. I've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter or X as it is now. Feeling a bit sorry for Alan Lawrence, and I would be in that camp as well. I think he's done particularly well, or bringing in a number 7 like Harry Deeves or something along those lines. But I think Ollie Cracknell could be the type of character that would suit Wales's needs at the moment. In that, as I sort of nail my colours to the mast on most weeks, and he'll win us collisions and get us over the gain line. That is, should he get on the park. Obviously, he's got to fight his way into the Test match 23. I would have thought that Wayno's probably in prime position to start in that 8 jersey now. But yeah, I think that's a great addition personally. And it's good to get him capped.
Yeah. And do you guys think that maybe we've seen the end of the marvellous Talupe at international level now?
I think he's a player you can't rely on, but he's just like the cherry on top at this point.
Yeah.
I really hope it's not the end. I hope he gets a proper farewell match, not like a limping off.
I think he's that good when he plays, whatever jersey he's playing in, his club jersey or his national jersey, that if he's fit, you play him at the moment. I suppose it's just a case of how much more punishment can the body take? How old is Faletau now? 30,
4, I think.
34? No
33,
spring chicken.
34.
Yeah, no spring chicken in terms of Welsh. But he's not had a drop off in performance, has he? That's the one thing
No, no.
I've noticed with him is when he plays is he may be coming back from injuries or he may be more injury prone now, but there's not a drop off in output from him, I don't think. Whereas I've seen like, when Lids was finishing and stuff like that, he was injury prone, but there was a drop off in output as well.
Yeah.
I would say he'd probably admit that as well. But I've not seen that from Toby at the minute. I think his output's exactly the same. His performance levels are still high, so if he's still cutting the mustard, I'd have him in there.
Yeah.
He's arguably Wales's best ever player, isn't he? Especially in the professional era.
He's up there, isn't he?
He's got to be, yeah, he'd be in the conversation, wouldn't he? For
I mean, I'd argue there is no conversation. He is just our best ever player, but certainly.
I'd make a very strong case for Alan Wynne-Jones, but I've got nothing
yeah,
against Faletau either.
Interesting discussion point on that actually. I was listening or watching to something else rugby related the other day, and although it's there's a little bit of semantics involved, but there's a difference between the best of all time and the greatest of all time. And some was saying that the greatest of all time is maybe not just their playing ability and the fact that they were a great player, taking Alan Wynne-Jones as an example, but also the fact that he did get to 150 caps. Everything else that he brought to the jersey rather than just his playing ability. Whereas you could say, I think that the people they were using in their discussion was DuPont, for example, might be the best of all time currently, but it's not the greatest of all time because Jonah Lomu, for example, transcended the sport
Yeah.
in the men's game. Sia Khaleesi's won 2 or 3 World Cups or whatever it is, and has done what he's done in South Africa and so on and so forth, and played elsewhere. So I thought that was interesting. I know gone off piece a little bit now, but I thought that was interesting topic of discussion there. So I agree with what you're saying, Nick, as well, in terms of Alan Wynne. He would be in that conversation, wouldn't he? It'd be hard not to be.
And the thing is, you don't. It's just a point of discussion.
Of course it is.
There's no prize for it, is it?
No.
They've both been absolutely fantastic players
Yeah.
for Wales.
You can absolutely have a conversation, say, I think so and so is the greatest player or the best player, and the other one disagree, and you don't have to threaten people's lives for it with it. It's great.
Yeah, it's great.
And
Yeah.
you also
let's not
don't
move on
need
to
to AI generate a terrible Mount Rushmore with their faces on. You don't need to kill the planet.
We're not going down that road.
Oh, they're so going to submit that now. God damn it, Hattie.
Please don't kill the planet.
But I said, just to sort of sum up with the Faletau thing, if he was playing, he would undoubtedly elevate that Wales team. But let's be fair, we need life without. Like, one of the biggest issues I think Wales has had since 2019 is we haven't really prepared for life after all these great players, and maybe actually keeping them on the ground is doing more harm than good. But I mean, to be fair, Wainwright has shown he's he's a very good replacement. Right, he's not as great as Wainwright is. Yes, he's no Faletau, but he's still bloody well good. And I'll be honest, I think I prefer him at 8 anyway than 6. I know he can play 6. I think he's.
No, I agree with you.
And Morgan Morse isn't exactly a terrible thing to bring off the bench when we've got, let's be honest, we'll have nothing to lose.
He's got a tough act to follow, does Wayno. So I think he's doing a pretty sound job so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So going through, talking about the Wales squad, we'll go into a bit more depth next week. But just off the bat, any big surprises of inclusions or exclusions?
I think I said it before the last pod that Steve Tandy's honeymoon would be over the moment he announced the team, and that was absolutely correct. We can all argue for a player A, player B, who plays for us, or I think the biggest surprise to me was the inclusion of Rhys Carry. Not because I don't think he's a good player, but I just didn't think he was available. I totally agree with his inclusion, but that was the biggest surprise to me. As I say, I can make an argument for certain Osprey players, but I'm not going to go there. It's, the coach has got to make a call, and you've got to back him.
Yeah, what I really like about Tandy, though, in relation to this announcement, I go along with Nick there. I like the Carry involvement. I think he gives us a point of difference that none of the other front row forwards will do, even though Dowie Lake's a good ball carrier. He's more of a nuts and bolts ball carrier, whereas a carry could come on for 20 minutes and cause absolute carnage at the end of the game. Obviously, the jury's out on his scrummaging. But I have liked the way that Tandy's conducted himself. My understanding is that he's been in contact with all the boys that, such as Harry Deves, for example, that would have been in with a shout and explained why they haven't been included, what work-ons there are, whether it's just the makeup and the balance of the squad. He's then personally contacted the likes of Brodie Coughlin and things like that, which I think is a really nice touch. And I don't think they've had that personal. That, to me, has brought a bit of genuine Welshness back to the environment. So hopefully, that goes a long way with the boys in building an environment, and they feel cared for, and they feel looked after. And even if you have been omitted from the squad, irrespective of your performances, having some genuine feedback from the national coach and saying, "Look, you're really not far away." Or if it was, if it's just a squad balance thing, and I'm thinking of Harry Deves particularly because he's been outstanding this season and last season for that matter, then you can sort of take that a little bit more positively if you're admitted and go,
Yeah.
there's things for me to work on and the door's not closed. Whereas under previous regimes, I don't think we've had that, have we?
No, absolutely not. As I don't. I mean, you've brought up Brodie Coughlin there. How pleased are you for them? Because I think that's someone who a lot of people on this pod have been calling for quite a while now.
Yeah, I think he surprised everyone, didn't he, when he kind of burst onto the scene last season, having to pick up the pieces from Elliot D's uh, injuries. Unfortunately, Elliot's injured again already, sort of similar time to last season. And I think, in fairness to him, he's backed it up, hasn't he? His line out and set piece has been good. I think he's benefited scrummaging wise this season from having the likes of Wyn Jones and Rob Hunt and Dylan Lewis around him. Solidifies that front row a little bit more. And he gets around the park and he's picking up tries off the back of the off the back of the maul, sorry. Gets around the park, carries hard. And I think he's genuinely someone that could make that step up to international rugby. He's a bigger guy than the likes of Elliot D and Belcher is. He's obviously got a bit more growing room left on that frame as well, and I could see him being a bit more in the mold of Dewi Lake moving forward. So yeah, fingers crossed it goes well for him and he gets a hit out. Unfortunately, I think even against France, we're gonna have to go fully loaded for all four tests, aren't we? Whereas previously against Japan, we'd have probably rotated in one of those fixtures. Your Samoas, your Fijis, your Japans, wherever the additional one is. But I can't see that happening this time because we need to pick up a win. So
That's our cup final. At the end of the day, that's our cup final. The other three are friendlies. That's where we'll be seeded in the World Cup.
yeah,
So that's our cup final.
I'd argue
absolutely.
Argentina and Japan. We have to go full ball and just go. And then, to be honest, if we're going to rotate, we might as well rotate against New Zealand. And in South Africa, it's going to be whoever's left. Speaking of that South Africa test, because we've got quite a few English-based players in the squad, and a lot of people in first choice, and some of them not playing that many minutes. Are you a bit worried that 12 of the squad are based in England?
Not
Yeah.
ideal, is it?
No.
I mean, there are obviously a few South Africans that are going to be missing as well, but not as many as there have been previously. A lot of South Africans have returned back to South Africa and therefore will be available. So that is slight concern. I think we're screwed either way. I think even if we did have our first choice, and have the English-based players, we'd be pretty screwed anyway. So does it really make that much of a difference?
Yeah, I think rotation is the least of South Africa's problems, isn't it? Let's be honest. Whereas it is an issue for us. I genuinely quite excited about this squad. When I look at it on paper, actually, I think it's got the ability to perform, and I think those first two test matches are winnable for us, especially if we can catch Argentina cold. They're a formidable outfit, don't get me wrong. But I think I'd like to see us put Japan to the sword coming up. But then you look at what we may have to roll out against South Africa, and yeah, unfortunately, it's chalk and cheese, isn't it? Are we allowed to bring more people into the squad, or is
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not. I
Yeah.
think the only time you're ever limited on this sort of thing is World Cups, where they have that enforced win out policy.
Yeah, well, in
Yeah.
that case, then
Because
I
we're
think
going to
we
have
have
to.
to.
I think we're
We're
going to
gonna
have to
have
for
to.
South Africa because we've only got 4 props. We've only got
There you
Yeah.
four
go.
props who will be
And
available.
I want to say we've got one of the smallest squads anyway. Most of the other,
It's only
like,
39 players.
yeah, whereas Scotland's squad is absolutely ginormous.
And maybe that's what going back to what Dan said, maybe that's what Tandy said to them. Look,
Mm.
I'm going to be caught, there's bound to be injuries, which of course there are in international rugby, any rugby really. And also I'm going to call in a couple of players into that final week.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the case. And I would expect to see then, depending on I can't think off the top of my head who's where, but I'd be expecting to see the likes of Deves and whatnot come into the squad then if that's the case.
Yeah.
So
Maybe,
yeah,
but I mean, I think the problem is back row, other than now Cracknell, you've got 5 back row. Well, I mean, you probably could do an extra one for training, but we've got 5 back rowers who are Wales based. Second row is where we're lighter. So we've got 6 second rows in the squad, 3 of them are England based. I said props. We're going to be after calling props, which I think is going to be quite difficult for some teams, particularly like Cardiff, who've got to play Zebra the same day. I know everyone's playing. And then centres. I mean, arguably the first choice centre partnership,
gotta go
that's
back.
gone.
Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, I said back row. I think it's just attritional, so we probably will see injuries. But anyway, one last point I did want to pick up, and that one against Nick. A name we didn't mention when we were talking about our second row is James Fender, who
Yeah.
got called up last year, didn't make it due to a concussion, I think.
I thought I really rate James. He's a big guy as well. He's almost 6'8", 19 stone, so he's certainly got the physique to play international rugby. I don't think he's set the world on like this season. He's been very steady, but he had a very good game when we come to talk about him, Rodney Parade on Saturday, and showed what he can offer. I was just a case of trying to consider who when we put this. And I think at that time we didn't know about Will Rowlands, did we? I can't remember,
Mm.
but certainly he's one for the future. I applaud the fact that he's going to have a chance.
Absolutely. Speaking of that derby, shall we get into some game reviews? I know we're sort of shuffling the order on the fly a little bit here, but I feel like it's going right next to you. Dan, you are the hosts. Do you want to talk us through 19-all draw at Rodney Parade?
Yeah, 19-all draw. As you've said, it's the second draw of the season for the Dragons. After drawing at home to the Sharks a few weeks ago, and on the whole, I think it sort of rounds off this block for the Dragons, whereby no one expected us to go and win out in Ulster and up in Glasgow, but and irrespective of the scorelines, everyone was sort of seeing that the Dragons were improved. And I sort of said at the start of the block, 2 out of 3 wins would be acceptable. Unfortunately, we've got 2 draws out of it, but in reality, I'm going to try and pick the silver lining out of this. Other than the Cardiff game, where I thought we were particularly poor, and it was probably because I was in attendance. So, that's the rugby gods kicking me square in the chops. I thought we were improved against both Sharks in horrendous conditions, and again on the weekend against the Ospreys as well. And I know Nick will come on now in a minute and say that he felt that the Ospreys should have won, and they probably should have done, being 12-0 up. But I think it showed that the Dragons have turned a corner a little bit in terms of their tenacity, and they've got a little bit more steel about them this season, because last year, 12-0, there's no way that they were coming back from that. So to finish 19-all, and we had a penalty to win it at the end, towards the end. Unfortunately, Tinus's radar was off a little bit. But on the whole, maybe it was a fair result. Because the Dragons were in the ascendancy then, last going off, and I felt the Ospreys were hanging on in there a little bit towards the end. And some stats for you. I was pleased actually the carry stats are in favour of the Dragons, 140 compared to 182, and territory and possession were in favour of the Dragons as well. Territory 59%, 41%, and possession 60-40 in favour of the Dragons. In terms of like sort of individual performances, etc., I thought Anisi showed again when he gets on the ball that he's a dangerous man. Excuse me, personally, I would have stuck him in at 13 from the start, and tried to get him on the ball a little bit more. Wainwright once again was absolutely outstanding for the Dragons. I think he's by far, and I saw something pop up on X earlier on. I think the supporters group down at the Dragons are sort of voting for Player of the Month. Well, you may as well just give him the prize now, wouldn't you? Because he's been far and above the Dragons' best player. And I thought he went particularly well. I thought the set piece struggled a little bit, especially at the scrum time, which is unfortunately for Super Chrissy Coleman, who's been called into the Welsh squad. Personally, in terms of the Dragons tight heads, I would have gone with Dylan Lewis ahead of him if anyone was going to be being called into the Welsh squad. But Chrissy's got the nod. I thought we struggled there a little bit. And I thought Rodri struggled a little bit at 9 as well. I thought the kicking game was poor. Excuse me. I thought the kicking game was poor. And when everyone's favourite astronaut come on, Niall Armstrong, he was much sharper, and I thought he got the Dragons playing a bit more. He sped the game up particularly well compared to Rodgers. I think it's probably time for them to have a little swap around, and I think Niall's earned his uh, earned his start there. The concerning thing for me, even though it was 3 tries apiece, concerning thing for me about the Dragons is they were all 3 maul tries from the Dragons where we've kicked our way in. I know Rodri picked up one, but that was off the back of a maul where he's just sort of flopped over the line. And actually, the Ospreys had much more variety to their scores. Cocknasinga scored one, I think, which he finished nicely. And who's the guy who scored on the wing? Who scored on the wing for you, Nick?
Uh, Hopkins.
Hopkins. But again, the point I'm getting at is there's a nice move to it. There's more rugby to it, and the Ospreys I felt showed much more attacking threat than the Dragons. Again, I thought the Dragons' attack was poor and blunt again, side to side, not much penetration. You look at all of those carries and the territory and the possession stats, you'd think that we'd have much more in terms of try scoring opportunities, but it's just side to side, which disappointed me a little bit. And whereas the Dragons have dropped off previously over the last couple of seasons, unfortunately, the tale of our season so far is the slow start, whereby we're letting teams get ahead of us, and we're finding it hard to claw back to that level of victory. But on the whole, it was yeah, the Ospreys started better than us and deserved their lead. I thought the Dragons deserved to fight their way back into it. They showed enough pluck and courage to get back in there, and a draw was probably a fair result on the whole. But it was a case of the Dragons maul overpowering the Ospreys maul at times, and the Ospreys attack outclassing the Dragons attack for me. But yeah, to sum up that first block, disappointing, but they're definitely improvements from the Dragons on the whole. It would have been nice to just turn one of those draws into a win. But I think compared to the Cardiff game as well, and I don't know whether Nick will agree with this, but it was a proper derby day. Less people in Rodney Parade this time around by about 2,000. I think it was 5,500 compared to 7,500 last time, but it seemed noisier from what I could hear on the telly. There's a bit more atmosphere, probably because the Dragons were still in it. And it went all the way to the mid 80th minute, and it was exciting to watch. So, yeah, on the whole, for me, a fair result.
Can I just ask you a question, Dan, about the
Yeah,
one and only Niall Armstrong?
yeah.
So I don't know if you've spotted it, but
Oh,
when
yeah. What
when
are you going to
his
say about the
name comes
flag?
up, yeah, why is it an Iranian flag?
I got no idea. I got no idea.
Because this
There
is
must be
it's
some
like
intern working at Premier Sports whose geography and flag knowledge maybe isn't the best because I can't remember
I'm
the
pretty sure
Irish
he's
or
from
the Northern Irish
Belfast.
flag being being the Iranian one. But you never
And
know.
this has
Maybe
been
he's gonna
like
maybe he's gonna play for Iran in their next round of Asia qualifiers. Who knows?
this has been like two or
Well, I
three
mean,
games
Sam's
now that
brother
it's
plays
been
for
up.
Malta.
Yeah,
That is true.
exactly. Yeah.
It's true.
So just one thing I'd like to add as well. I think Dylan Lewis picked up another bump. Um, so we wish
And
him a
Wyn
speedy
Jones.
yeah, yeah, and Wyn Jones. So the curse of The Dragons' injury list is ever growing, isn't it, already? I think we signed 14 players and about 10 of them are on the sidelines. On the plus point, Thomas Young's debut, I thought, was a positive one. He's all action at number 7. He had a try disallowed, rightly so in the end, but again, it just showed what he's capable of. And Harry Beddle coming off the bench, I think, is a fantastic deputy to him. And I really hope the Dragons use Young and Beddle in that sort of master and apprentice type role, because Harry Beddle, I think, set his stall out really well against Cardiff. And he come on, and that shows that there's that good depth that we should be having here. But those two, for me, are perfect for the back row balance, whereby they're both out and out number 7s. So yeah, honourable mention to Thomas Young as well. Ryan Woodman's line-up work was good. And Hugh Anderson on the wing was a little bit wasted on the wing for me, because the attack just don't get him the ball in any space. I know it means moving Angus around or leaving Angus out, but stick him at fullback. Let him field kicks and launch counter-attacks and these sorts of things. So yeah, there you go. What did you think, Nick?
So just want to kind of go in with the having Anderson on the wing. The other alternative is you hire a coach who can coach the attack and have the wingers and encourage the wingers to move in. If you look at the way the Cardiff back three work, they work as a unit and they pop up about in the field. I think you just need to encourage that a little bit more, because I think the same thing's been happening with Rio. It's where it looks like he's not doing anything all game. He's not being encouraged to go in.
Yeah, the attack's poor. There's no doubt about it. We can't get away from that at the moment.
I don't think a Cardiff fan should be talking about another team hiring a coach right now.
We don't need one. Our attack's working.
Go on, Nick. What do you think from the Osprey side of things on?
Well,
on
obviously it was a battle of the two giants of the URC. It was actually a really good game, tense and enjoyable. Proper, as you say, Dan, a proper derby. We've got a poor record of Rodney Parade, and that continues. I thought we were reasonably comfortable, and at 50 minutes, I thought we would. We had a 12-point lead. I think it was 17-5 at that point. Win behind us. I thought, we're gonna do this. But fair play to the Dragons. They kept battling, and as we've all referred to, Adam Wainwright was superb. And then our discipline just went to pot. We gave away some really silly penalties, and it allowed the Dragons to get a foothold in the game. And in fairness to the Dragons, the driving maul is becoming a weapon. You can argue the rest of the attack isn't fantastic, but they got one weapon which they used really well, and we couldn't defend it. What concerns me a little bit is we've conceded a few tries to driving mauls, and we're not a team that competes in the line-out. If you want to improve your line statistics, play against the Ospreys, because it's only one or two lineouts will ever jump against you. A slightly disappointing game for me again was we had 2 players named on the team on Friday afternoon who didn't actually start, so I don't know what's going on there. The loss of Keenan Williams is probably the most influential, because I think we lack a little bit of physicality and direction at centre. The players who come in do a reasonable job, but I think we certainly miss Keenan Williams. Ultimately, I think some good news obviously was the return of Jack Morgan, and he showed in his little cameo that he is probably a little bit above any other player in Wales at the moment. He was very good. Shout out to young Estin Hopkins, who we've referred to, scored a good try and had a decent game. Daniel Cassendi had his best game for a while, won a lot of aerial battles, and the starting pack put in a good shift. The half-backs, especially in the second half, were not at their best, but it wasn't them who gave away the penalties, was it? And that allowed the Dragons to get into our 22, 5-10 metre mauls, and that's how they scored. So there were a lot of ifs, buts and maybes. I thought we should have won, but we didn't. And in the end, we were hanging on a bit. I thought friend of the pod, Ben Breakspear, and the other officials were good. And I think that contributed to a tense but enjoyable game. Reflecting on the sort of run of fixtures in Block 1, it's been disappointing for me in terms of wins and collecting points. I knew South Africa was going to be difficult. I thought maybe we get 11, 12 points. Ultimately, we've got 7 and we're currently 14th. So we need to get much better in Block 2. We need to actually see what Ryan Smith can offer. Hopefully, we'll see a little bit of Morgan Morrison or Watwin Watkin. I'd be interested to know what you think of Mark Jones as a coach, and and his posts and pre-match comments. I find him quite honest, and he's admitted the results so far aren't good enough. So we certainly need to improve in the next period now. In the URC games, we've got Edinburgh away, Boxing Day against the Scarlets away, and New Year's Day against Cardiff. So those are three very big games to turn around or not our URC season.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point on the coaching because for me this season and the end of last season, there's no doubt about it. And having caught up with the game from the weekend, that you can see that the Ospreys' attack is much more creative, especially compared to the Dragons' attack. There's much more going on. They went away and scored a shed load of tries out in South Africa, but they seem to have lost that steely edge up front a little bit. Whereas it's the same personnel, and I just wonder whether more on-field coaching time has been spent on attack systems. How are we going to set ourselves up? What our lines of running are? What they want the forwards to be doing? And unfortunately, like everybody else, there's only so many hours in the day, whether you're a pro rugby player or you work in the office, and something's got to give. So I wonder whether it's taken that sort of time away from doing the nuts and bolts of. The scrum was on top, but you're right. The line-out maul, they've conceded a few around the line-out maul and stuff like that. So maybe that's a consideration there. But on the whole, I think that the Ospreys' attack is much improved this season, and the Mark stewardship. There's no doubt about that.
And how do you, how, Harley, how do you think he comes across when you listen to him speak?
I mean, he seems all right. I mean, he's no jockey. I don't think he inspires a sort of level of confidence that sort of drags you over, even when results objectively are awful, like when it's Fish in charge. But I also don't think he's a blithering idiot like one of the other West Walian coaches. When I hear him speak, I feel like he just sounds like he's out of depth. But
You
can't
don't
name
need
it.
to kick us when we're already down, Harley.
I'm sorry, but I was asked. I've given my honest opinion on that one.
Um, I think for me, I have to be completely honest. I haven't necessarily focused on his comments. It's not something I've spent a lot of time on, but yeah, I think it's pretty here nor there. I don't think it's particularly inspiring, but I don't think it's particular drivel either. I think it's in the middle. Yeah.
Do you know? I think a level of honesty from the coaches is a good thing because he's not. I don't think Boise's under any illusion as to where they are at the moment. I don't know. Do you think he's being overly critical, Nick, or?
No, I think he's been fair. Some of the pre-match stuff when people are fit or not fit, I think
Yeah.
sometimes find a little bit frustrating. But post-match, I think he's very honest. And he fully understands it's a results business. And yeah, we could go to Bulls and play some nice rugby, but ultimately, we were well beaten. And then we've had two games then two home games where we should have scored another try. We didn't. And we were physically dominated by Glasgow. And I'm not trying to run down the Dragons' performance at all on Saturday because I thought they were, it was excellent the way they stayed in the game. But when a team's winning with the win behind you and you're 12 points ahead, you should go away and win that game.
Yeah, I agree. And I wonder where the injury thing as well is because and I get frustrated with this with the Dragons. You never know what the prognosis of these injuries are, how long they're going to be, what the overall status is. Like we've lost Lucid and a tight head again now over the weekend. We've lost Rob Hunt, but there's been no update on Rob Hunt, for example. The only one we've had a little bit of an update on is Pierre, the Tongan centre, in that he's had an operation. And I wonder whether the comms are purposely limited from the regions at the moment because of the small squad size. maybe just to keep the opposition guessing a little bit, to go, well,
Yeah.
actually, we don't know who we're going to be playing against until
Yeah.
the team sheets come out, and therefore they can't, it limits their preparation a little bit.
Yeah.
I
And
don't know
maybe their
whether that's
rotation as well, Dan. Because
yeah,
if they're thinking they're going to, it's a much weakened team, they'll
yeah,
think, oh, we'll rotate this week.
yeah.
And so maybe you're right. That's a consideration.
Maybe there's something like that. I don't know, but I can see your frustration from an Ospreys point of view, and it's frustrating our end as well. I think in Gwent that the comms around, and just from a rugby person, you just want to know, don't you, what the prognosis is and what you may be playing with long term. And I think it's similar in all the regions. Really, we don't quite know what's happening with the injury status of players, and that's the only other thing that I was thinking about was we're trying to play a little bit of mind games with teams just because
Mm.
we are thin on the ground in terms of personnel. But yeah, who knows?
I know this is coming from a different sport, but I think because I do watch multiple sports, sometimes like talking about injuries and the fact that we're not being super updated with injuries kind of goes over my head a little bit because I'm used to ice hockey, where a lower limb injury could be an ACL or it could be like a sprained toe, and you're not getting a differentiation between the two. But I
Okay.
know with ice hockey, like the reason why they don't tell you is that they don't want people to target that injury when they come back. And I do think, as Dan said, with our really, really small squad sizes, actually, is it a bad thing if people aren't getting too many details?
Two.
I mean, you don't necessarily need details on the injury because obviously this information is private, but a rough idea of saying so when
Yeah.
Adams was out, they said, oh, probably targeting to the block. Mason Grady, they're saying they're targeting Christmas. Like
Mm.
giving people general ballparks and saying, all right, so and so's doing well, they're back in training. Like if you look at a lot of the other teams, they do say they don't say so and so's got a grade 3 MCL strain. They're going to be
Yeah.
this much. They're in this point in the rehab. They're injured. They're looking like they're going to be due back after the international block.
Yeah.
And it's just giving some information so people can think in their heads.
Yeah, but I
In
just
hockey as well, it's ice hockey. It's quite easy to hide that you've been completely taped to head.
Yeah.
In rugby, it's quite obvious when you're strapped up and looking more like a mummy.
yeah, and
I'm thinking like towards the end of Hadley Parks' career there.
I mean, that man
Uh,
played with a broken hand and he was all right.
I think you're right there. At football, they do the same, don't they? The manager will have a press conference ahead of the football fixtures on the Saturday, and he'll say, we've lost so and so for X amount of time with a hamstring. He's looking at 4 to 6 weeks and all the rest of it. I'm just wondering whether because we haven't got like for like replacements, it's much easier to prepare to play Cardiff without Toby Faletau in it. It's going to be much easier this season to prepare to play against the Dragons if you haven't got Payer at 13, for example. If you know he's fit as an opposition staff, you can start doing work on him. You can go and watch his Tongan games. You can go and watch his zebra performances last year. You can go and watch him against the Sharks already and start trying to work out how to defend him. But if the Dragons don't announce that he's quote unquote definitely fit for next week, then you don't know whether he's going to be playing or not. And if you haven't done that homework, then it maybe gives us just a little bit more of a surprise package that, oh, actually, it's not Joey Westwood at 13. It is going to be Paya. So you've only got sort of 24 to 36 hours to do a little bit of prep work on him when
Yeah.
they announce this, when they announce the squad. I don't know. Whereas if we were blessed with two 13s that were very similar, then it wouldn't matter, would it? Because
No.
they'd have to do their own work on both of them anyway. I'm not sure. It's just a working theory, but I don't think all regions are particularly good at the minute with the comms coming out in terms of injury statuses.
Mm.
yeah, absolutely. Anyway, moving on to what was actually the first game of the weekend, but I thought we'd just talk with the derby as it flow better. Scarlets have finished their South Africa tour, and in fact, their opening block with lost 29-19 to Sharks, who, a John Smith penalty in the 63rd minute, taking away the losing bonus point, leaving them rooted at the bottom of the table with nothing. Hattie, frustrating time for Scarlets, despite having a few extra players back.
I can't sugarcoat it. It's shit. Like it is. Some of the rugby we've played over the last couple of weeks has been some of the worst Scarlets rugby I have ever seen. It has been piss poor, frankly. I don't like swearing on the pod, but it's true. It's been atrocious. Um, there are so many different things you're watching it and you're like, why are we bothering with this? Like this is an experiment that hasn't worked. Or like, why is Johnny Williams captain? You know, so many different things like that that continue to confound me. Um, having said that, I did think this scoreline was going to be bigger. I thought we were going to get absolutely screwed over, especially after I saw the team sheets and saw that we basically were playing the Springboks. Um, so I don't think 29-19 was that bad. Um, I think when Wales play the Springboks, it's going to be if that was the scoreline when we play the Springboks, I'd be
And be
quite
happy.
yeah, I'd be fine with that. Um, having said that, there were when it got to the end of the game, I was like, I'm actually annoyed that we didn't get a try bonus point or a losing bonus point because it was in our grasp and we just didn't have the impetus to do anything with it. I think we played a lot better in the first half than we have for most of the season thus far. I still think we look very rusty. I think we look quite disconnected. But is that surprising when we've had so many early injuries? Maybe not. Um, I would say I've been quite critical of Johnny Williams. I still think he's a terrible captain. However, it was probably one of his better games. I can't deny him of that. He had a really, really nice offload to Harvey Cuxon, who's one of the loan players that we've got, who I'm hoping we can turn into a long-term signing. There was a moment where he went down injured, and there was a moment of me going, oh, this is actually a bit of a problem now if he goes off injured. But luckily, Sabrina Carpenter's espresso came on and he perked up a lot, so it was fine to continue. Um, the Blair Murray try I thought was great, but it's Blair Murray, so I'm not really that surprised. We did have a slight issue with the restart, um, which has been, I think, an issue throughout the season, but it is starting to get like, oh, well, it's like our fourth game now, and this seems to continue to be an issue for us. Um, and then Dan Davis at 7. I miss McLeod. I think that's my biggest takeaway is I miss him, and we shouldn't be relying on one player, especially as a club side. You can't rely on one player because there's too many games in a season for them to play every game, um, and you never know what's going to happen. I think we're missing him in terms of his actual play. We don't seem to have somebody that can replace him, but we're also missing his leadership, and it's really shocking that we don't have anybody in the squad that's able to step up. Um, Obviously, Costello wasn't picked for the Wales squad, which was somewhat of a surprise. I think he's been pretty much even if he's not starting, he's been in the squad pretty regularly for the last couple of years. So it's a bit of a surprise, but I hope that he's able to kind of work a little bit more back at the Scarlets, and maybe pick up some confidence that he's lost a bit over the last couple of years. So yeah, it was bad. The first 40 is probably the best 40 of rugby we've played this season, though. It was just we lost it in the second.
I'd be interested to know where you think that, because I just looked at the league table in front of me now, and I think one of the Scarlets' issues is that they haven't picked up any points whatsoever in terms, the Dragons haven't won a game, but we picked up a bonus point in one fixture and obviously drawn two.
Yeah.
No bonus points. That's a that's a worrying
We
stat. And then I'm just looking at your next four fixtures: Glasgow at home, Bristol at home, Bordeaux away, Cardiff away. Where's the win coming from?
yep.
Cardiff away usually.
I think one of our biggest problems is that we just cannot rack up, like as you said, the bonus points are important. We need to get those try bonus points. We need to get that losing bonus point in. But we're either giving away penalties that are kickable and it's drawing, it's going from a 7-point lead to a 10-point lead, and we're out of contention there, which is exactly what happened this week, or we're just not able to get over the line and score 4 tries, which last season wasn't a problem for us. This season, I don't know what is going on. as you've said a couple of times, Sam, we don't have any gain line. We can't win any collisions. But everything just seems really disconnected. And unless it's Blair Murray being Blair Murray, we just seem to be extremely poor.
I thought he scored a really good try though when Rogers came in off a scrum. I think. I thought he thought he was pretty good actually. I thought Johnny Williams had his best game.
Yeah,
I thought Loughton ball made a difference to physicality where you
big
really
difference.
struggled. And I thought Cookson was very good for the lone player as well.
Mm.
The scrum will actually look better when your two less experienced props are on. And then your two experienced internationals came on, it was crap. And that's a bit of a worry. But I thought it was a better performance than the Scarlets than I've seen any other game this season.
Yeah. I also think, just to note on the scrum, something I did think was really interesting was that Coxon actually moved to 6
Oh, did he?
and Lousy went in the second row at one point, which I thought was really interesting. It's not often that you see your starting 6 and your starting second row switch. You maybe see it when somebody comes off the bench. So um, I I think going forward, our second row pairing is Lassie and Ball, and they just have to start. If Clarkson can play 6, which he did at the weekend, and I think he was, I was quite impressed for a lone player coming in. Then yeah, I'll take a second row 6 combo at this point because our physicality is sorely lacking.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough. Last season when we were rounding up the season, I thought, oh, fair play to the Scarlets. They've gone in and got themselves, Champions Cup rugby. Fantastic. And then you go and lose your two best forwards, or two of your best forwards, and irrespective of the other losses, and you just look at it and go, the current situation that we find ourselves in ultimately is the maker of your current squad issues and so on and so forth. And I'm on about the situation in Welsh rugby and the level of uncertainty in it. Because why would players stay if they can go and get more something more concrete elsewhere? And it's just relentless then because you've not even got in the the two Champions Cup. At least if you were in the Challenge Cup and it could be, I don't know, it could be a Newcastle or whoever it is. And you go, doesn't matter, play Llandudry. The Llandudry team is, whatever. It doesn't matter. But you can't go and do that against Bristol or Bordeaux because it'll be a cricket score. So then you're
We'd lose
risking.
half the team through injury. Like,
Yeah, of course you would. And now you're staying down the barrel of going, well, we got to go fully loaded against Glasgow. We got to go fully loaded against Bristol. The two home games. You have to do that at home, don't you?
Yeah.
And then you travel into France.
I mean, our only benefit is that everybody at Bristol seems to be injured anyway. So,
Yeah, but it's a month away. Knowing your luck, they won't be by the time they come down. They'll be fully loaded, and it's almost cruel the way that this, and then you finish off with two Welsh derbies in Cardiff and the Ospreys. The reality is, and I'm not saying this to be horrible, you could go until the new year without a win.
yeah, I think that's what we're looking at. And
That's
it's
a
because the thing is,
sad state of affairs.
once you start a losing streak, it's very, very difficult to stop it.
Well, yes, like winning is
Yeah.
habits, and winning and losing is a habit. But yes,
I can't believe
fingers
you've
crossed
asked
we
you.
can turn it around.
I can't believe Hattie's talking to a Dragons fan about losing streaks.
No, but hey, trust me. You look at
Yeah.
that's. Do you know what? That's the
Anyone would know.
perfect anecdote, though, isn't it, Harley? Even though the Dragons have played so much better in these last couple of fixtures, and the personnel is so much better on paper, irrespective of the injuries, the Dragons still can't turn those draws into wins.
Mm.
When you look at the Sharks fixture and the Ospreys fixture, all the territory and possession was in the Dragons' favour going into the last 10 minutes of the game. They both ran into the middle 80 minutes, 84, 85, 86 minutes, and they still couldn't convert the penalty goal attempt. They still didn't take a drop at goal, all of these things. It is a habit. And it's really, in an elite sport, how do you go about breaking it? It's really, really tough. And from a Dragons perspective, you go, well, we are seeing better performances, the personnel is better. When Seb Davis comes back, Levi Douglas comes back, Hunt, Pye, all these guys are getting more excited. Thomas Young's fit again now. Oh, yeah, maybe we can pick up those wins. Maybe we can beat the Con at the Dome, these sorts of things, because the team is much better. But from the Scarlets' perspective, you go in, oh, Glasgow at home, Bristol at home. Where are they coming from when you've been playing your best team and getting beaten anyway? I
What
don't know.
what's
It's tough.
There's
your
a screen
view?
cap moment for Hattie.
What's your
I
view,
don't do it
Hattie?
on purpose, by the way. This is my face.
What's your view, Hattie, on Plumtree? I think there is a player in there, but I find him a bit frustrating.
Yeah, I've said it before, he reminds me of like a naughty Labrador. Um,
Yeah, remember now.
and and I just think it's the best way to describe him. I think he needs a coach I think he needs a role, and I think he needs the coach to tell him what the role is, and I think it needs to be quite strict. Um, because I think you can almost see his brain turning sometimes when he's playing, which is great, but he either overthinks or he doesn't think at all. And when either of those two things happen, he gives away a penalty or gets a card. From either doing something stupid or losing his rag. I think he gives us something, and I think he has something to offer the Scarlets, and I think he has something to offer the Wales team as well. I think he's just got something in him that you don't see a lot of. Um, and it's something almost indescribable. It's really special. It is Labrador like. If anybody at home owns a Labrador, you know what I mean. There is something about them that's just slightly unhinged. But you look at them and you can't stay angry because of their little face. Um, I think he just needs very strict coaching, and he just does not have that. Um, he needs a he needs a strong defense coach, and I think if he had a really strong defense coach, or even if he had a mentor, actually, somebody that was in the Scarlet Squad that was a little bit older than him that he could connect to,
Mhm.
I think it would make a world of difference.
For me, Plumtree, when he starts going off the boil like that, it's usually a sign of frustration of things not going right.
Mhm.
And there's usually a thing of things going like the yellow card against the Stormers, where he just seemed to be so absolutely fed up with the referee just
Yeah.
bottling decisions and not calling things that he just took it into his own hands,
Yeah,
which
and I think
you can't do in pro rugby. You will probably
no.
get away with it in like Div 4 or seconds rugby when the ref's not looking, but
And I think that comes down to, as I said, like a strong coach that believes in him or a mentor, but also it comes down once again to the Scarlet's leadership on the pitch. Like, I know when I've been on the pitch, not at all at that level, but you see your teammate starting to get a bit bubbly and start, and as a senior player, you kind of go, mate, you need to calm down a bit. And nobody turns around. And they know that he's a problem. They know that he's got a temper, and you don't see that at all. Um, I think he just needs somebody to put the brakes on him a little bit, um, and to calm him down a tad.
On Plumtree there, I give you a little bit of a silver lining though, in terms of the Sharks result. It was I say, it was only a 10-point loss, 4 tries to 3,
Mm.
and the Sharks starting lineup included Oxenche, Bongi Mbanambi, Eben Etzebeth, Sia Khaleesi, Grant Williams, Andre Esterhuizen, Lacanio Am, Ethan Hooker, Jordan Hendrickson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even though the record books will only show it as a loss and he didn't come away from anything with it, actually, maybe when you go name for name, like I noticed Archie Holt's started for the Australian tight end. Oxenchain must have been licking his lips walking out of the changing room, wouldn't he, seeing Archie opposite him? Because if he was, Australia, not, renowned for producing massively hard scrummaging tight heads. And if he was a hard scrummaging Australian tight head, he'd be playing for Australia,
Yeah.
Yeah.
not for the Scarlets. So,
Yeah.
there you go. So maybe there is something there to say that they didn't go out there, get absolutely pumped. And they,
Yeah.
they were able to take more away from the performance than just, the experience of going on tour.
And
Is that all
like,
sorry, is that all the games done now? We've got nobody else to discuss now, have we?
Or
Nah, I mean it's just pretty
let's
regulation when I definitely at no point thought we were going to lose horrifically.
let's just move on. Nobody wants to hear this. No one. Oh, you
Yeah,
go.
Go on,
no one,
Ali.
no
Go
one
on,
loves,
Ali.
no one
We
loves,
set
no
you
one
up.
loves, no one loves it when another team's successful.
Come
They all
on,
love being,
checkbook Charlies. Let's hear it. Come on.
yeah, checkbook Charlie, the players who had to pluck from the English Championship.
Oh, come on now. Yes, a real Hollywood
We
story,
can't all
yes.
go for Tongan internationals now. Not everyone signed Wales and Tongan internationals during the off season.
Come
I
on then,
mean,
let's have
Let's
it.
hear
Come
it.
on,
Let's hear
everyone
it.
be quiet. Everyone be
Look,
quiet. Let King Harley talk about Cardiff.
I'll keep it simple then. We won. We ground away out. It wasn't particularly pretty, but we found a way to win. That was a game we probably lost by 12, 13 points last week. In fact, the equivalent 2 seasons ago, we did lose by about that. We started well and lost it towards the end. This one we fell behind, but we were always within the fight. Some fantastic tries from Johan Mulder and Josh Adams in particular down the right wing. Ewan Lloyd, you know what, Scarlett's absolutely thankful to have our prize fund back because that winning kick,
Great kick.
it was just brilliant. Finished off a block where we got 20 out of 25 points, fourth in the table. Arguably can be slightly aggrieved we didn't beat Munster, but I mean, I think if you told us four wins and a handful of bonus points at the start of the season, we'd bit your hand off. So yeah, good block for us. Bit worried when we come back from the international break. There's gonna be the squad management's gonna be very tricky, particularly going into Europe and derbies.
mm.
I think Cardiff done well.
Cardiff's taking over the world, Harley, or?
No, I learned my lesson after the 35-0 of the Sharks, which I milked for a good 2 seasons.
Sorry, Nick, I cut you off then. Go on.
No, I just say I think I said as a joke, but you've got to take your hats off to Cardiff, haven't they? They've had a really good start. Some of the fixtures have been favourable, but you've still got to pick wherever you are. And if you're playing at home, you got. But I think the game that really impressed me for Cardiff was Munster away, because
Yeah.
Munster had a good start.
Yeah,
They
really
look
good.
they look a different team this year,
Yeah.
and to go out there and get 2 points, I think was a Harley. To get four
Yeah.
tries and within set, that was a fantastic result.
Again, arguably, we could have and probably should have won it.
Yeah,
We outscored them in tries. We just
yeah.
didn't in points.
But the home games, you could argue, you should beat Lions if you're going to come top half of the table, shouldn't you? But Edinburgh and Melksham, you've got a poor record against them, I think, in the past. So
Yeah, as I said, it's been really bad against Edinburgh. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we've had these sorts of easy runnings before, and last season was an absolute peach of a season. Yeah, ended up third, but we sort of bottled it and probably didn't pick up as many points in those games. Losing the Scarlets at home, I think it was the home game against Scarlets, we didn't make the most of. Again, Edinburgh away, that game just got blown out of the water. Cardiff for the last few seasons bottled these easy run-ins.
Yeah.
We've made sure, and we've been winning ugly as well. Normally, it's a case of if we can't win pretty, we can't win. Whereas this season, we're grinding out. I mean, you talk about Munster. For me, the Connacht game was really, a team we'd lost 3 times to this calendar year. In fact, we've played Connacht 4 times this calendar year is mad, but that's by the by. Yeah, I'm just really impressed with that. I hope it keeps on. I said Zebra away with all our internationals gone. That's going to be interesting. Then going to Start away, Ulster at home, then Scarlets Dragons before the Ospreys on New Year's Day, and then Benetton. It's not necessarily the most difficult running, but it's going to be for the thin squads we have in the Wales. That is going to be a tester for us.
Mm.
I'm just looking at the fixtures now, and I think that do Italy have a game on the same day that
No,
I don't
No.
believe they do.
it's
no.
just us, is it?
Yeah.
It's just us idiots. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a shame. And you'd like to think when they're looking at that fixture, based on Cardiff's good start, I know they'll want Wales to do well, but the reality is Wales could play 10 fixtures in a row against the Springboks and not win one. Whereas Cardiff have got an opportunity to have a good go at the league and making the playoffs this year. Um, whether that'll happen or not, I don't know. But you're looking at Zebra in the league, followed by, oh, let's see, followed
Start
by,
away. It's
yeah,
start away, and then it's Ulster at home
yeah,
before
the league games are on,
before
but
it's
now,
a trio derbies.
yeah, but you could win the next three in the league, is where I'm getting at. Zebra away, and then you got two home fixtures. You know, the Dragons is a bogey team for the Dragons. You know that. And the way the Scarlets are going, that's a winnable game for you. What do you do in the Challenge Cup then, Harley? Do you rotate it?
So, but prior to coming on this, I was having a bit of discussion with the Cardiff Central boys who be recording Tuesday night, and we sort of came to a thing of because we weren't sure what to do. And I think the idea is what we think probably they'll do is it'll be whoever's available for Zebra, keep that squad together, and they go out then to start, and then slowly bring in some Wales internationals for the three derbies, and then see where we are after that. Being a bit more mix and match, and then if we've come out quite good with that, the Benetton game for those last two, for the last two pool fixtures, just see how we are. Target the Racing at home because it's a home game against big French side, and then nothing extra away. Then is if we're in decent shot of placing, go hard. If not, maybe give make that the squad game.
I just look at it from a point of view because you've done so well in the league. It's almost a shame to kind of throw that away by prioritising some of these Challenge Cup fixtures, and let's be honest, Stade Francais and Racing are not going to prioritise those fixtures, are they? We all know that what the French are like, particularly around the Challenge Cup. So no, it's interesting. As much as it pains me to say it, there's no doubt about it. It's been a really good, well, in actual fact, it's a good job Cardiff have had a decent start, didn't it? Otherwise, we'd all be loitering around the bottom of the table. So they're holding the Welsh end up at the moment. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Indeed.
good on the checkbook, Charlies.
That's it.
WRURFC.
I said, talking of league tables, shall we go on to the one league table that absolutely matters, which is the prestigious Wrap Prediction League. So we've had
Right.
our first block, so as promised, we have an update. So we will go from fourth to first. So in fourth place is now see very much like the URC label, the bottom three are very close, and then we've got a front runner who's up ahead. So last place we've got Hattie with 37 points. Then we go up to Dan with 38, and then I'm on 39, and then running away with it at the moment. But remember, all can change. Is Nick with 47, a full 8 points clear.
That means nothing to the Ospreys. We'll balls it up. I'll balls it up. Don't worry.
Someone send the drug testers around his house. This must be some cheating going on here. Performance doping he is.
Just remember, I always get really bad at the start of the season, and I can pull through. I do what
Well, we'll see.
I
We'll
normally
see.
do, and have a stronger back end.
We'll see.
I did
Anyway,
so we're gonna
forewarn
move-
you all. I'm terrible at predictions.
I'll be honest, you were up ahead for quite a while. Well, actually, you were ahead for the first game, and then that it all went.
Yeah.
But let's not go there. You've had a couple of spot on predictions though, which is a rarity. Now, before we move on to what is undoubtedly the big bit of news of the thing, if you are enjoying this podcast and our insane ramblings, please do like, subscribe, share the links with friends, leave us lovely comments. Someone will read them. Probably not me. As soon as this podcast ends, I just go into a booth and I power down for a week until the next episode. So please check that out. Also check out all the other pods on the Rap channel, including Nick's wonderful Welsh Rugby pod. All the individual region pods are out, the SLC pod. And then over on our sister channel, Global Game Line, you can hear the lovely Hattie talking about women's rugby. I don't know. I believe they've had a bit of a break. There's rumours they may be coming back.
We are coming
I'll
back. We've just got to figure out what we're doing.
Yeah. Then we also have the Bit of an Animal pod for those of you who want to listen a bit more in depth about South African rugby. Island pod, which is, I believe, just known as the Provincial Show. You've got American rugby, although that again is taking a bit of a downward step with all their rugby winding up. And we've also then got the other headline pod on that, which is the United Rugby Rewind. Now, if anyone here happens to also be a fan of Scottish or Italian rugby, they are looking for a new presenter on the URR. And if there are a couple of you who want to talk about all things Scottish and Italian rugby, why don't you get in touch and we can see if we can help you set up a pod for that under our umbrella. Now, that is my contractual obligations, so I get my free pack of biscuits at the end of the month. Let's move on to the big news story, Nick.
The big news story, obviously, was Friday afternoon, where I think we were all caught a little bit unawares. We'd had a little bit of inside information coming through to us, and we thought, oh, that's okay. We're going to have 4 teams. They're going to be differently funded. And then after about 45 minutes of eventually the WRU announced through Richard Colley-Keywood that we're going to be losing a team. They were quite reluctant to actually give the details of that, but I know enough geography, I think, to work out that if there's a team in East Wales, that's likely to be in the Newport area. It could be in Abertillery. I'm not ruling that out at this point. There's going to be one in the capital, which, as far as I'm aware, is Cardiff, and there's going to be one team in West Wales. Now, that for me is the 2 teams currently in West Wales are the Scarlets, and just the other side, the Lycha, the Ospreys. So it's a direct shootout for me between those 2 teams, which team survives.
Me and Nick are going to have a fight somewhere on the M4, and that will decide which team stays.
And I should say, actually, that's obviously the headlines, but there were some things I did agree with. Obviously, as a pod, we've always supported 4 teams. I quite like the idea of perhaps bringing the National Academy. The initial idea of that was bringing them all together, but I think they've said now there's going to be 2 national academies, East and West. They will reduce the amount of players. I assume that's for men and women. We'll wait and see on that. There's going to be 12 regional development centres, probably building on what's there already across the whole length and breadth of Wales. And there will be full-time employees within those organisations to develop the pathways for 13 to 16-year-olds into academies for the teams. So there are positives, but obviously we're going to probably, and obviously the women's information about possibly some additional money. The way they've sold it, and Patty will put me right on this, is that there are 2 teams already.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's kind of got twisted, because I think there are a lot of people who are very much unaware of what happens in Welsh rugby underneath the men's national team and maybe the team that they support. But there are 2 I don't want to call them semi-professional, but 2 high performance teams within Wales. You've got Brython and Gwalia, and Brython primarily are based with the Scarlets at the moment. Gwalia primarily based with the Dragons. They were supposed to get rebranded. So prior to it being announced that they were looking at reducing the men's teams, the women's teams were going to be rebranded, and they were being sort of auctioned off to a region. That was held and kind of paused until they decided what to do with the men's regions. I would be surprised if the amount of women's contracts were reduced, primarily because I believe there's only 42. Right. So reducing that would be a bit bizarre, and quite frankly, they're paid peanuts anyway. So I think that'd probably stay about the same. But yeah, as you said, there's 2 high performance teams. I think the idea would be presumably for them to take a step up. Both of those teams have previously received World Rugby funding, so it's separate funding to the men. They've had separate sponsors to the men. It's they're not taking the money. It's not that we're getting rid of a men's region and that money is being funneled into the women's teams. It's separate money, the separate spot. Like, it's very different. What I assume would happen is once it's kind of confirmed which of the men's regions are staying, I think they'll probably align the two women's teams to a region. So we'll end up with Dragons women rather than Gwalia, for example. Um, and it stay like that, and then being kind of brought in house a lot more. I think with the women's teams as it stands, there is kind of like sometimes there are certain things I'm like that feels like not a waste of money, but I feel like it could be streamlined a little bit more with the coaching, and with facilities and with kit, for example, and things like that. Where actually, if you had Dragons women, you're using the same facilities, you're using the same equipment. Somebody like Reece Patchell, for example, that is taking on a part-time role could kind of double up and things like that. So yeah, don't believe the comments that the women are stealing all the money. That's very much not true. It Yeah, it is very interesting. But yeah, it seems what has been interesting is that with so the Celtic Challenge fixtures were released this week. And something that has been interesting is that both the Dragons and the Scarlets have been very much like aligned. These are our women's teams. And I think that could potentially be going forward one of the interesting things that influences the bun fight that's going to ensue.
And then obviously the main headline obviously is the reduction of one men's team. Uh, Dan Harley, how have you taken that? As obviously, I'm sure Hattie and I will come in because it does seem to me, unless you tell me differently, it's a fight out between me and her and between her, Hattie and I. But what do you think the implications are for you, Dan, and what do you think the implications are for you, Harley?
I think that, yeah, I'd go along with what you were saying. What everyone's basically reading between the lines and saying the East team is going to be Gwent based. The Central team's going to be based at the capital city, and then it's a toss up in the West. Unfortunately, I think already the Dragons have come under some real criticism and early fire, haven't they, from the trenches, whereby it's, all about results on field. And it's hard to shy away from the harsh reality that the Dragons were the worst team in the URC last year and have had a bit of a decline, especially since they were sort of rescued out of administration and they had their financial woes, shall we say. However, it is quite clear that the new ownership group has come in and got to grips with the business that the Dragons have now got. Dragons RFC Limited, if you like. The off-field operations is very good. We own Rodney Parade. It's rented out to Newport County Football Club. They run a load of events down there. We spoke about the kids' parties and so on and so forth. The business is in good shape now. We've got assets, unlike anybody else in reality. And therefore, the off-field side of things quite simply must show for something. And therefore, that's why, that we've signed the PRA, which in hindsight, maybe the West Walian regions wish that they did now. So
Definitely.
I think that we are better managed off the field. There's no doubt about that than anybody else. I sort of nail my colours to the mast on that one at the moment. We got to be the best managed team off the field in and around a business sense. Yeah, the results haven't been great, so I fully accept that. However, none of this is the Dragons' fault. It's the union. It's not the Dragons that are deciding to cut a region. We've all been staunch in our support for 4 regions. I don't want to lose a region. I still think that 4 clubs would be the way forward. But the line in the sand has been drawn and it's going down to 3. So yeah, it's difficult. And look, what I would say to people as well that talk about rugby finances and to listeners is go out and look at rugby finances around the world. They're not in a good shape whatsoever. For me, every time I switch on the TV, there's dwindling crowds. I watched a lot of the Super Rugby over the summer. New Zealand's national sport rugby, dwindling crowds at some of those fixtures. We've seen the crowd comparisons now out in South Africa. They treble World Cup winners. They've gone back to back on World Cups. So, or quadruple, they won 4 World Cups, haven't they?
Yeah, I was going to say they're going to come for us if we
They're going to
forget
come
the
for us.
fourth.
Yeah, fourth. Yeah,
I thought you were
fourth
just
one.
announcing that they've won the 27 World Cup.
The 27 one, yeah.
Good
Man's a
MLR,
time traveller everywhere.
MLR are losing teams.
Yeah.
Cardiff have gone into administration, and irrespective of all the stuff around Cardiff going into administration, they're a capital city rugby club. That should never be happening. England have lost Worcester, who have now come back. Wasps have gone. Newcastle were on the brink unless they were saved by Red Bull. So some things clearly had to change because rugby finances globally are shot, absolutely shot. So something had to happen, and it's just a shame that this come to this. I still think we could have kept 4 and underpinned the pathways a little bit better, improved the the academy structure, the national academies, and so on and so forth, and gone back to the way that we
That's
did.
that's been reinstated actually.
That's been that's been reinstated. So maybe we could have kept with our a little bit longer to see what talent we did pull through, because I don't quite buy the fact that there's not enough talent. There's not enough talent at the moment, but
No.
that's because we've underinvested in the talent that was there. I got no doubt we've lost people. Number one, we've lost people over the bridge. We know that. Yeah, Kane James, for example, Manny Faye were both so. One's playing for England, the other one may end up playing for England. So we've lost out there. That's a structural thing. But yeah, unfortunately, I think it's going. And what these three, the other thing as well, mind, is it's not necessarily just the Dragons are staying and Cardiff are staying. We might all be rebranded. So who knows what's coming in terms of that. Now, ultimately, I'm pleased because pro rugby is going to stay in Gwent. And if it was about keeping the Dragons or keeping pro rugby in Gwent, I could probably make, again, a more valuable argument to keeping pro rugby in Gwent based on its heritage and everything that the density of rugby clubs in there. That's another bolt on as well. But I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this because Dave Redding in one of his press conferences did say, I am fed up of people in Wales banging on about previous history. It's not about where we've been, it's where we've got to go. And he doesn't care who beat the All Blacks in the 70s. And to a point, he's probably right on that. I don't know what you guys think.
It does go into a thing because obviously you could make a strong case for and against any one of our teams going. Cardiff financial battery case, but we're the best supported region. We're in the capital. We're the one we're actually showing success even with, having one arm tied behind our backs by the union, which is something that's happened to all of us. Ospreys have all that traditional success, but then if Dave Redding says, "I don't care what you've done in the past," well, having 4 league titles doesn't really matter if you're not getting into the playoffs now, and you're bombing out of Europe, sort of thing. Scarlets, it's geographically, it's the smallest region because it's in theory it's supposed to extend out to North Wales, but that's not practically possible, so it doesn't really happen. But again, they've got they've got a lot of history there. Dragons, yes, their on-field results have been awful, but they do own their own ground. Their business plan is solid. They've got one of the best, strongest community teams, which is something that they've said is important to them. And Gwent has the most number of rugby clubs. So there are things for and against. I mean, for me, I was a big believer if 4 should stay, or it's basically for me, all should go or no should go. You should basically rip it down and start again. Now, obviously, there is going to be a team in the capital, great, but it doesn't mean it's going to be Cardiff Rugby. It turns out that WRU were heavily pushing to get Y11 to come and buy us out and basically have it merged. I don't know if the plan was then to have the big games in Cardiff and a couple of other games in Bridgend. But then, it's again, where would you play? Because if it's not called Cardiff, it's not in blue and black, CAC won't let you use the arms pack. That's one of the annoying things with Cardiff. That's the reason why we can't get any assets. We can't get a long-term lease, things like that with all this certainty. by the sound of it, that the Hollywood buyers that we supposedly have are out because WRU wants full rugby control, which is a non-negotiable for them. They want to have control of the rugby, which is going to be very hard for any benefactor to justify under these new deals. The one thing that I think should be hope for Scarlets and Ospreys fans is every time the WRU come up with a new long-term plan, they fuck about with it every year.
Yeah, and they have to scrap it.
That's been one of the biggest problems with all four regions is we've been struggling to plan because they keep changing goalposts, they keep moving things. They at one hand they were saying about how great attendances were for certain region, and all of a sudden they only get 7:45 kickoff games, which is something the fans say they don't want. And then all of a sudden, oh look, the attendance is dropping. Say no one's supporting Welsh rugby anymore. It's like it's because you're trying to make it impractical. There's nothing, and all the issues that are like, trying to get home from Cardiff at 9 o'clock on a Friday night and 9 o'clock on a Saturday night are very different prospects. As someone who spent a lot of time going out in Cardiff and had to spend until 5:30 in the morning waiting for a train on a Sunday, or sometimes, well, Sundays at 8 o'clock and thing, but it does feel like the union fucked about with us and then went, oh, look how terrible it is. Now we've got to make you punish it. It was the same with the COVID loans. They went, oh, we haven't got any money. So what we're going to do is we're going to lumber you in debt, which ultimately is what killed Cardiff because they broke it, they cleared all their debt in 2019, 2020 financial year. And then they all of a sudden we've gone bankrupt. And a big part of that was WO saying we want our money back. And that's what triggered the process. Partially thing, but it's
Do you think
just frustrating.
well, sorry to jump in here. Do you think from a playing and staff perspective at the Scarlets and the Ospreys, assuming it's, we're making those assumptions, but it's a fair assumption that it's going
Fair
that way.
assumption to make.
Fair assumption to make. Do you think that as a coaching staff and a player group, you'd want that decision made now?
Totally.
So you can start planning. And then I also think there needs to be more responsibility on the union to try and make sure that those two groups of players, once they've decided whatever the team's going to look like, obviously you're not going to be able to keep them all necessarily, to keep the ones that are not being kept and the coaches distributed then to areas within the other teams within Wales where they could be helpful. Like, for example, if Boise became available, the Dragons should, or whatever the Gwent club looks like, the East club, should snap him up because it would make the attack so much better. Duncan Jones, for example, might work well at somewhere else. You can see where I'm getting at,
Yeah.
I think Duncan Jones would be a prize for whichever would have Duncan Jones would not be going no matter how those teams went together. I think
at the moment you've got the union need to be doing all they can to stop Jack Morgan going over the bridge.
I think just to jump in on that, I think as well, like we're talking so much about the clubs, we're talking about the teams, as in the senior male team and the coaching staff that go along with it. But by losing a region, we lose so much more than that. We lose the community coaches, they're going to be out of a job. You're going to presumably, there's going to be ground staff that are going to lose their job. There's going to be businesses that are around the stadiums, they're going to lose out on business. They might close. You're going to have bus companies that are going to have less bookings and might go out of business. You're going to have, if we lose a region, does the community part of that region close down, or is it going to stay open a bit like RGC? What's going to happen to the wheelchair rugby teams? What's going to happen to the disability rugby? Like, there's so many different layers to this. There's going to be so many people losing their job in a time where getting a job is really hard, and we're in an economic crisis in the UK generally, and we know that West Wales is one of the most deprived areas in the UK generally, and we're going to be putting people through that. If the Scarlets close down, is there, and there's more opportunity, are people going to be able to move over to the Ospreys and get a job? Like, there's so many different questions that goes beyond male players and their coaches.
Just to jump in, I've sort of gone through the whole range of emotions. I've been quite deflated and exhausted by over. That's only something. I did some work when I was working on the Kubler-Ross model of grief and a change. Been through denial, anger, bargaining, depression. I was in depression for a lot on Saturday, and certain acceptance as well. I suppose we're no worse off than we were at the beginning of August, Hattie. We sort of knew it was between us and us teams, really, and that's what it's proven to be. I listened to Dave Redden interviewed on the Scrum 5 podcast. He gave a little bit more insight than anything that was said in the actual press conference. And he talked about namings and things like that. I don't think they're stupid enough to go away from calling the Dragons as the Gwent base team, for instance. He said that they want to do it as soon as possible. He was pushed on that by Gareth Owen, Rhys Owen, and I agree, because let's be honest, as an Osprey fan, if we're going, I really don't see us any point in this lasting another season after this one, because what's the point of it's death by 1,000 cuts? I'd rather, play our last game at home this season, and if it's not us, it's not us. There we are. We get up, we get on with it. He confirmed that the three teams would get 655 million, which is quite an uplift, isn't it? Let's be honest. So if you're one of the three teams, the three teams that survive next season are going to have a considerable increase in budget on the current 4.5 million. So, let's get on with it. And similarly for people in different jobs, let's look at 2Ping across in certain senses, or if you're going to be made redundant, that unfortunately you're going to be made redundant. But I think it's the not knowing is sometimes difficult. He also confirmed that there would be no regulation or restriction on the number of within reason of foreign players. He recognised if we go to 3-team model, there aren't enough quality players currently in Wales to say there's only two non-Wales qualified players. So, that gives potential for the three teams to start planning their squads for next season. So I think Dan asked the question. To answer I see no point in delaying. Let's get it done. And if it's not us, it's the Scarlets. Good luck to you, Scarlets. If it is us, I'm sorry, Scarlets. It's us.
Yeah.
Do you think that I think they'll make a new entity. I just got a feeling
Okay.
in order to try and get buy-in in West Wales, and or sort of from wherever they're going to draw the line, slap bang down the middle of from Bridgend across. Then technically, I think they're going to create a new entity in order to get buy-in. And then I look at infrastructure and where do you play those games? Well, there's already a stadium in Llanelli in Parc y Scarlets that is purpose-built for rugby.
Yeah.
That's not to say that games can't be taken elsewhere to Bridgend, for example, or wherever it may be, and it would probably be pertinent to do that, especially in the early days to get buy-in. But do you, you guys, I suppose, do you buy into that new entity as it comes? I know, Nick, you, for example, travel miles and miles and miles every week to go and support the Ospreys. Do you go and do that if it's the West Wales Raiders?
If it's the West Wales Raiders playing St Helens, I would. I'm not going to watch the West Wales Raiders in Llanelli.
Would you do it if the fixtures were split? So you had some at St Helens, some at...
I'd have to give that some thought. Similarly, because they have talked, haven't they? YLM by Cardiff, and you could in theory have YLM by Cardiff and a central, if you like, region, Swansea to Cardiff, playing the majority of the games at Cap, and a few games maybe in the redeveloped Swansea.
Yeah.
But obviously Swansea is the second city in Wales.
Yeah.
So it's so hey, look, it's I think they just got to decide now. I just don't see any point in trying to delay it and just trying to stretch it for another another season, because they've made the agreement. And I also think what will happen is if it's not us, I think YLM will pull out.
That's the right kick in the...
And I feel the same, like with the Scarlets in House of Luxury. They've bought into the brand pretty hard. I don't think, if they tried to come up with a West Wales team, I don't see why they'd buy in.
It's a it's a really interesting one, and you look at it then if they go into because I think they're going to try and keep the Cardiff team at the Arms Park
Yeah,
purely due to the location. They've tried rugby in Cardiff out at Leckwith previously. It didn't work. Um, for me, it would make sense to keep it at the Arms Park. Therefore, you're going to have a Cardiff team. Therefore, you're going to have even more, at least in the short term, alienation, I suppose, of the valleys above you. Um, your Ponties and so on and so forth, that sort of area. I don't know how they, do they redesign the map of the regions when this comes to fruition now? I don't know. And the other thing as well that I suppose we need to take into consideration is success does, breed a fan base. Um,
yeah, true.
I don't buy into this, or, certain players have got a fan base themselves, and I'm sorry, I don't care where Louis Rees-Zammit's playing, unless he's playing for my team, I ain't gonna go and watch him.
Yeah, agree.
But because I listened to the Dragons Lair podcast this morning, it was interesting that it was 5,500 and 7,500 a week before at Rodney Parade. Imagine if the Dragons were winning. You'd have double figures there every week. There's no coincidence that Cardiff have played arguably the best brand of rugby over the last couple of seasons in terms of the attacking rugby, and they're more successful this season. They're having better crowds than ever before. There's no secret to the fact that the Liberty Stadium was much fuller than it was last season when the Ospreys were playing in Champions Cup games and so on and so forth. Success breeds, other successes off the field, doesn't it, in terms of fan base and so on and so forth. So with the uplifting cash and the movement of players and so all of these things, is it going to drive that success? Are we going to be more successful? Say this all happens for next season. Will those three teams be more successful than the four are now?
They'll be better. They'll be better. They
Yeah.
won't. They won't it's not guaranteed success, but they will be better. With more money, and let's just say you put together a squad based on Scarlets and Ospreys.
Yeah,
You'd have
It's a pretty
three.
decent
You'd be
squad.
four. You'd have three or four deep, five deep in certain positions of
yeah,
quality players. Whether they're good enough to challenge with Leinster and Bulls away is another question, but they certainly would be stronger.
yeah. So therefore, you'd have more wins, or even if you're not winning the right amount of fixtures, you're definitely in games more, and that sort of thing. And then ultimately, because sports fans are fickle, aren't they? Right? We've all seen it. Take a footballing example. Cardiff City Stadium was empty last season, wasn't it? When Cardiff City were getting relegated from the Championship, the
Yeah.
top of League One, and the crowds are starting to come back in because the team's winning.
Mm.
There's more positive feel and things like that around the ground. And I just think that whether we like it or not, if everyone improves and starts winning fixtures, you're going to get bums on seats.
I
Yeah.
also think like time will change things as well. Like we look at it now and we're like, oh, I'd absolutely would not support a team that was in Swansea. But in 5 years' time, people have time to adjust to it. You're going to have kids and young people, new fans who are not going to have those ties. Like my family's from Carmarthen. If I was born 20 years previously, there's absolutely no way I would have supported the Scarlets. My dad doesn't care. Like he has no tie to the Scarlets whatsoever because he's from Carmarthen. For me, I'm like, oh, well, obviously I'm going to support them. Like that's the team. Same with my cousins. My cousins grew up going to those games, so those kind of the tribalism that existed in like the 80s and 90s has disappeared somewhat. It's still there. There's still the old people on Twitter or the older generation on Twitter who are going to absolutely tell you that there is no way they're not going to support insert whatever team it is here and they won't support a region. But it is going to change. If you give it 10 years, West Wales Raiders or whoever would have a fan base who are pretty on it.
I think, I think you're right. The big thing for me with the union now as well is that we can't be in this position in 20 years' time again.
No.
Whatever happens, we can't be in this position in 20 years' time. So you need to future-proof the game now
Mm.
so that we're not making these mistakes, because the reality is we've not dealt with professional rugby well in Wales at all. From the clubs that used to be around, to losing the Celtic Warriors, to now losing a team in some shape or form, or the rebranding of everything now. And whilst I don't like losing a region, three's better than two.
Can I ask the
Um,
same question to you guys then? And I don't mean this. You are, in my view, fairly secure. Whatever guise it's in, whatever colour you're playing in. Would you rather it happen sooner, or would you rather it stretched out
no,
until the season after?
no,
So
sooner for me.
it's a bit of an interesting one when you bring that point up, because WU actually wanted it to happen sooner, but actually it got vetoed. The plan was to fulfill their obligation to provide 4 teams. They were going to draft in an American side. That was vetoed by South Africa, quite fairly, if you ask me. It was, eh, you know, on the face of it, for me, it's a case of, well, they're already traveling to Europe 3 times a season,
Mm.
having a trip to the US as well, plus then the jet lag, which is the exact sort of thing they wanted to avoid when they came over from Super Rugby. Because I said it wasn't necessarily it was the fact that they were constantly knackered because they didn't know whether it was day, night, or Thursday.
Mm.
Bit of the cynic in me thinks it's because they actually wanted the cheaters to come in as that fifth, as a fifth thing, and that brings up interesting issues in itself. Because in theory, I believe in legal, you can't have, because in certain leagues you can't have multiple teams owned by the same person. I don't know how that works in when you've got union control sides
Mm.
like the Scottish and the Irish sides. But with Y11 owning the cheaters as well,
Yeah.
that
But
could
take
cause. But
all
then
that
it's
away,
fine enough
Harry.
for,
What's your time scale then? What's your
for me.
preferred
I
time
agree.
scale?
It should be sooner rather than later. But I think the issue is now the W are tied to
Yeah.
the URC contract. But the URC, but Wales want, if the situation came up, so I think effectively he wants them to go bust, because then they can hold their hands up and say, well, it's not our fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
might well happen.
that's yeah. I think I'm with Nick that if we know this is happening now, which they've been open and public to say, look, we're going to 3 teams, we may as well do it from the start of next season.
Mm.
What are we going for another season for? Because all you're going to have then, if I was playing now in one of
Yeah.
those teams, I'd be going, right, I'm off.
Yeah.
Why are you going? Well, I'm not going to have a team next year. I may
I
as well
think
go now.
as far as I think we've got 11 players are coming out of contract this year, including Jack and Dowie. Yeah. Well, as
Yeah.
you say, are they going to hang
Well,
around?
no.
No. The,
Go.
the, the thing I don't quite understand, it might be part of the URC, but is why we can't just sell a franchise. We've got 4 teams. Why can we not just sell one of them to another union?
By the sound of it, the issue was that that's what they were trying to bring this American franchise
Yeah.
in one of those spots. But I think it requires everyone to
I
agree.
think
So
it's yeah. There's
that sort of
I think
change
there's a
within the
veto, isn't it?
contract.
It's all or nothing. Everybody has
Yeah.
to agree to it.
So they have to now wait until the next round of. This is the reason why it's taken. So actually, I think it's, well, the negotiations are meant to be 27-28 season, but from the 28-29 season, I think, from what I read it as, is that this basically they've got to wait for the URC to be ripped up and renegotiated of who
Yeah,
wants
I
how
was going
many
to say,
spaces.
because I don't think, if South Africa will want a fifth South African team, I wouldn't be surprised if the IRFU are still eyeing up London Irish. Um, and the Welsh, Scots, and Italians are going to be like, actually, can we have the Georgians so we won't look as bad?
Careful what you wish for on the Georgians, because it's only going
That's
to
true.
benefit. It's only going to benefit their game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because what I would suggest is they're going to have one team, and what I would suggest is they're going to basically plug all their
National team.
internationals in there, be effectively the national team. But um, Yeah, just to go back to the overall point, I think Nick's right as well, and we're not just on here slamming the union for everything because there are some things underpinning the main headline that I actually quite like. I think like the SRCs go into, I think you said 1.5 million,
I
Nick,
think so.
Yeah,
I
so
think
that's
I think
trebling the budget,
treble in the budget. Now for me, that's
which
brilliant because there's a lot of good players in there, a lot of youngsters playing in there, a lot of Wales 20s people playing in there. You look at the Llandovery teams full of Scarlets at the moment. Swansea have been supported by the Ospreys more this season, so that can only be a good thing. And it's brilliant for coach development as well. The other thing that I was sort of querying as well, and I don't know what you guys think on this, but from the rugby side of things. Obviously, I totally agree that if I was a businessman putting my cash into this whole thing now, I'd want complete control over my player roster, if you like. I'd want to know who I can get because if I can go out and bring someone in like a Louis Rees-Zammit, for example, or a marquee player that's going to put bums on seats and sell those shirts, I want to be able to control that. But from a coaching perspective, is it necessarily a bad thing that they centralised at the union? Because at the moment, you take the Dragons as an example,
yeah,
the quality of the coaching is always being um,
questioned.
being
Yeah,
questioned and scrutinized. Whereas if
yeah,
they were coming from a centralized location, you know that there would be a bare minimum standard there. Whereas we didn't know what Philo's overall coaching prowess and standard was going to be like. Matt O'Brien's in there and he's heavily criticised at the moment. All right, we know Patch and Dan Lids and people like that are in
mm,
there that are both brilliant players, but they're early in their coaching career. And McLeod's come over from New Zealand having just been coaching NPC. Whereas if they come from like a centralised centre of excellence,
yeah.
put my teeth back in, then we know that there's a guaranteed level of quality. There's more of a QA process going on, if you like, in terms of the coaches that are being put in. I wasn't so adverse to that.
No, I think it's a mixed bag, isn't it? Because obviously, quite understandably, the emotion, the focus is very much on the losing a team. But there were some things, as you say, that actually, I'm not totally opposed to either.
I think a lot of my kind of thoughts on it where I'm like, oh, this is, like the WRU having complete control. If we had a union that was known for being good and not completely mismanaged and didn't leak like a sieve, I'd be like, yeah, okay, like we can manage things well. Them having complete control probably isn't a bad idea. However, they're known for being terribly managed. They're known for the fact that news got leaked the night before and then it turned out to be wrong and then the actual news got leaked like an hour before anyway. Um, it's just frustrating. And it's kind of like, well, why have we got a union that can't sort themselves out wanting complete control? Like, it's just not going to end well. And I think we all know that the likelihood of it ending well is unlikely.
I've got a
Yeah,
funny feeling we're going to come back to this in another pods.
yeah, we are. Yeah, no doubt
absolutely.
about it.
I just want to have one final thing with the control thing. So this is clearly stolen from the island model where the force, a lot of their money comes directly from the RFU. They have a lot of control on what they say, and they appoint the head man. But key thing here is they are contracted by the IRFU, so they pay out of their own budget. It's not out of
Yeah,
theirs. It's not out of the
Yeah,
teams. Then if they have private investors in, those private investors then can then sign in a marquee player they want. Right? So when they're adding these extra bits, when they invest in, so that's where they get their influence and they walk through there. Whether that's enough to appease these other players is when they say, look, this is the sort of style of rugby we want. We want Dragons be playing. We're going to put this guy in charge. He's going to bring his own team in. You work it. I think if it wasn't for the fact that the W have such a bad history of dictating and not collaborating, I think people would be a lot less worried about it. I agree with that. I think having centralized and having all the teams singing off similar hymn sheets will help the national game in part because everyone is you're reducing the amount of instead of that first week of in camp you're not updating language for people. You're not trying to get people to play a different system. You've all got, if you're all playing variations of the same sort of thing, or you've got the same sort of style of game, that helps. But again, I just don't. I mean, the whole thing with the leak of we're staying at 4. Then there were lots of people. Then you had lots of murmurings about, oh well, what was the point of that? These guys should go. And then all of a sudden they've gone down to 3, which says to me that they've done it to save face, to make it something like they've done something.
Yeah,
Instead of just owning up and saying, right, 4 is what we need to stick to for now.
but I almost wonder. So something the WRU have been criticised for, and I'm one of the people that has highly criticised them for it. Not that I think they know who I am. Is the fact that they do leak like a sieve, and every bit of information is leaked beforehand. I wonder if, as a part of like their rejig, and I'm probably overthinking this, that they leaked incorrect information to see who would leak it, because there were some people who went straight onto Twitter and literally like ripped what the leak was. Like people that were relatively high up, and I'm like, actually, I'm wondering, did they do it on purpose to figure out?
I think you kind of also gave a little bit of leeway to Dave Redding. He is fairly new to post. He's got a key post. So any cultural changes within the organization, good or bad, are going to take a little bit of time to take effect. So, we need to see how this plays out.
Yeah, I totally agree, Nick. And I think that whilst I'm against the reduction of regions, what I want the union to go and do now is to future-proof the game so this doesn't happen again. Make good decisions, put the right people in the right places to make those decisions, and then B, go and make the most of what you were set in motion now, and improve pro rugby in Wales. And if that happens, if they go and do that, if it's going to be 3, and it looks like it's going to be 3, if we end up with 3 teams that within the next decade challenging in the top levels of the European Cup and making semi-finals there regularly, and all 3 teams are in the playoffs, then we
and the national team's doing well in the 2021 World Cup in America.
Exactly, and everything's going well, then we can turn around and we'll all go, you got it right.
Mm-hmm.
If, however, by the time, in 10 years' time, if we're staring down the barrel of losing another team, and the pathway's still shit, and we're still losing players over the border, and the women's game is still effectively semi-professional, and all of these things are still gone wrong, then we need to rip up the whole constitution of the union or whatever it is, and reinvent the wheel and start from scratch again, because we can't keep going through this change process every decade or 20 years. It's just not doable. Safeguard Welsh rugby now for the long term.
Absolutely, I think that's a fantastic point to leave this. So I said I imagine it's something we're going to have debated more, but it is getting late, and I do have a long drive in the morning, and frankly, I just want to go to bed. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, Hattie. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Nick. No rugby for the pro sides this weekend, but I think is the SRC still on? If not, there's definitely community rugby on. I highly recommend you go support your local teams.
And there'll be Welsh women playing in the PWR, free to air on the BBC, 1 game this week and 2 on YouTube.
Just go and watch Abbott Leary.
Or Abbott Leary, yeah.
Exactly, right. Nostar.
Nostar.
Yeah.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.